Well, hi, Carrie. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. How are you doing?
Hello, Vanessa. I am doing so well. Thank you. I'm excited for this.
I'm so excited for this. And you have such a cool story. I'm so honored that you let me tell it in the book. It is so neat to watch your evolution, and you just, every single thing you do, every single place you go, have such a strong direction. It's so cool.
Oh, stop.
Well, let's talk about a little bit about who you are. So tell me a little bit, Carrie, about your background and the brand that you started building several years ago and kind of how that's evolved.
Oh, evolution is absolutely the name of the game because my background is really varied. I actually started out in the performing arts when I was really young, but I always had several jobs and I was kind of learning along the way. Once I moved to Los Angeles and I started working in the production office for like high budget studio film and television, I got a real knack for doing a lot of things, and it kind of lent itself towards specialties in people and relationships and also specialties in operations. So I was working in production for a long time, about 10 years. When COVID hit, I switched to managing COVID test sites and realized I wanted to get my MBA, where I met you. And during that process, coaching started to become something really important to me. And I got really invested in the people side of coaching. And one of those kind of rabbit holes actually led me to date coaching and matchmaking, which we talk a little bit about, and then eventually executive coaching. And after all that happened, I am now the director of operations at a luxury gifting agency in Los Angeles called Carnaby and Vine. I host a podcast called People Fuss with my partner in life and love, Doug Daniels, and I still do executive coaching and kind of leadership coaching, and I still have a couple date coaching clients.
So let's go back to the date coaching really quick because it's so interesting the parallels between what you've done. But for the date coaching, you had that counterintuitive approach. Can you tell us a little bit about what you told people to do if they wanted to date online?
Yes, I remember talking to you about this because sometimes I would tell people to care less.
Yep.
I would say, I know this is really important to you and you want to find the love of your life, but when you are starting out in a space like this, I need you to care less. And it was
Hmm.
about holding back emotional investment because you are spending too much. I mean, coming from an MBA background, like you do not want to put all of your eggs in that basket with strangers online or bots online or whoever they are. So I would tell people to care less, which I think hooked them a lot.
The MBA approach to dating, if you will. Yes, I do think it hooked them a lot. And it was quite a success. I mean, undoubtedly. But then you grew and you wanted to change. And this is a question so many people ask about the personal brand, right? What if I change? And to that we say, well, corporate brands grow and change all the time. And so, there is a way to do it. And I'd love to hear what are the parallels between the executive coaching you do and the dating coaching, and how did those cross over?
Yeah. It's so obvious when you actually talk to people, especially if they've done any bit of both. Because I've met a lot of matchmakers who are also really good business people. And it's because matchmaking and business have a lot of people problem solving skills. And it has to do with interpersonal skill sets and sort of mending what's broken in some way. If you're looking at a team, an internal team, let's say you're executive coaching or leadership coaching, you're talking about someone's team and people not getting along and first impressions being the wrong thing, all of a sudden you're starting to use these phrases where you're like, oh, that's kind of like dating, you know? Oh, I guess I read too much into that impression of that person and actually that's not them. And maybe I need to give them another shot. Maybe I need to look at it from a perspective of what their strengths are, which is strengths-based coaching. It definitely spans from dating to leadership. And when you're talking about people, any space where people are trying to get along with each other, the parallels are just everywhere. And even in like house hunting, apartment hunting, you look at parallels between something like date coaching and business coaching and stuff. It kind of shows up everywhere where there's people and first impressions and problem solving between people.
Yeah. And you also had crossover in your audience because you saw these parallels. And so you told me you were able to get a little bit of a head start when you decided to pivot into leadership coaching. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, sometimes I would have clients that would actually pivot from one to the other. So we would be date coaching for a while, and then date coaching would lead to them having a much better handle on dating and feeling like, I got this. But then they would be struggling with something. Maybe they were writing a book. Actually, I had one woman who was starting to write a book. Maybe they were struggling with a presentation and they were nervous about at work. And I'd be like, I do leadership coaching as well. If you want to coach around something different. And they'd be like, oh, yes, please, because that approach is the same. We're looking at strengths, we're looking at obstacles, we're looking at how to move forward from point A to point B, reflecting on, those things. So I actually did have clients that I did both forms of coaching, hopefully not at the same time, but when word gets around that you're also a date coach, a lot of times you'll get a really uh, successful person, woman or man, and they find out that you are a professional matchmaker and dating coach or have that in your history, and that's all they want to talk about. I mean, I've been at even MBA meetings where everyone's supposed to be talking about business and they hear that I'm a matchmaker, and then we're just talking about matchmaking for 2 hours because
Hmm.
it's an interesting overlap of people stuff. So definitely had overlap in clients, and I remember from our executive coaching sort of sessions where I was training, I went to like a master's level training for
Hmm.
coaching. I remember so often hearing my professors through that coaching system talk about how many of the problems that they were working on with leaders, that they thought it was about the workplace, all their issues. It actually wasn't. It was their personal lives and their relationships at home. And you see both of those things happen with both those spaces. There's overlap.
Yeah, it is so, people don't realize it, but that's the beauty of a personal brand and having a distinctive point of view, right? People don't realize it until they realize it, and then you can't unrealize it. So you also did something so expertly that we talk about in the book, we talked about in class, and that is the work that you've done with your website, the corner of the internet that you've owned, your audience that you've owned. And so, yes, you pivoted. Yes, your website now looks much more like that leadership coaching website versus your dating website, right? But tell me a little bit about how having that website, having those lists that people could opt into over time, how did that help you pivot your brand and launch your brand when you were pivoting, kind of relaunch or rebrand? How did already having that existing audience that you owned through your website help you?
Yeah, this was one of the huge takeaways from taking workshops through UC Davis, was the idea that you really have to make sure that you have your own listserv that nobody can take away from you. Because if you do want to do something like Pivot, your people trust you so much already, and you're not trying to hashtag your way into a new audience from scratch. So I used my same listserv from my old sort of dating only sort of
Mhm.
folks that had, opted in over time. And I give them the opportunity to follow me in this new journey. And most of them do. And that is a huge head start. And that I use that same list when we launched People Fuss. I was like, if they're into dating and relationships and they're into leadership, well, guess what? This new podcast is doing that. So we're going to get some conversions. And I use that same listserv to reach out to them and say, hey, I'm doing this new thing and I need supporters and I need people to, jump on board. So it was so much better than dealing with the ever changing landscape of social media lists, which you've said this before. And I hear your voice every time, which is like, you don't know what's going to happen to their algorithms tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen to your followers. TikTok almost got shut down. And then where's your audience? Where are those people? So it was invaluable, that advice. I used it twice.
And it's interesting because I think it just seems like, oh, social media is the way now. We don't need any of that. But when you actually look at your engagement rates, which you do so well, you realize that social media really is more of that impersonal space as well. So not only do you have this owned audience, but people tend to convert better still over email and then bring text into the equation. And we're seeing big conversion rates and it becoming more of a thought leadership space as well. But did you notice the same thing as you would put your own emails out versus your socials and the engagement rate?
Yes, and I think that sometimes it's overwhelming with email platforms because you have to design a little bit. Like, certainly you have
Mm-hmm.
templates and you can do, there's a lot of like help with AI tools these days, but there is some sort of little extra effort, maybe some thought put in because it feels like you're writing a letter to the people that know you. And there's kind of no takesies backsies with it, right? Like once you hit send and it's in people's inboxes, you're like, ooh, there it goes. I hope there's no typos. And social media, you can edit, you can take it down, that kind of stuff. So I think there's a little bit more thought put in, and I actually think there's a bit to say about like those email marketing campaigns and when they're good and what you learn from them. And I found that the engagement for especially for certain kinds of people was more meaningful because they're like, I opted into you. I already knew I wanted to get this message. So the chance that they're going to listen to you and do your CTA is a little bit higher. And then that engagement's better. They're actually going to comment on the video on YouTube when you ask them to. So I definitely found the engagement through the personal list was more meaningful and a little bit more robust.
Yeah, never fails. And research does show that email versus socials, really it's double or more, engagement wise, really that sticky lift. Tell me this, Carrie. You have done so much on your personal branding journey. From the very beginning, what was it that made you step out? What gave you the courage to step out?
Ugh, I'm blessed to come from a performing background, and that is to say I'm okay with being having a voice out there, but all that said, I had a ton of anxiety going into business school coming from a theater background. You feel like I don't belong here. I um my skill set's so different than everyone's skill set. And of course, halfway through the program, I realized my skill set actually is what's missing from many MBA folks. Like what they need is what I have, and maybe
Mhm.
I need a little
Mhm.
bit of what other people have. But it's a huge balance because you have to sell your story. And I love storytelling, and I've been in it for so long. And storytelling and business are just hand in hand. And in order to sell that story, so once those kinds of things clicked, and honestly, the your personal branding workshop that we all did together so much, especially your stories about like everything you do in real life, you are your brand. So are you the person who leaves the work party, early to go take care of your kids? Are you the person who kind of is making a fool of yourselves and getting drunk every time? I realized when you said that I have always felt that way, but having it literal, I started to think a little bit differently about like, oh, performing is not just when you're prepared and on stage or in front of camera. There's like way more to it. So that gave me a little bit more confidence in knowing like, oh yeah, my personal brand, like even doing this interview with you, I recognize like I can't show up to something like this and not be myself across all my other platforms. That will not be authentic. So I don't know if something gave me the courage to step out, but I definitely gained a lot of confidence in talking about new things and seeing my brand in a way bigger, broader way than just like one little video or being on a stage.
Right. How do you measure success?
Oh, I am at that age now. I'm in my 40s. I really feel like if I am satisfied with what I'm doing and the people I'm doing it with, and I have enough to, like eat okay and pay rent and stuff, I feel good. The world's in such a tricky place, it seems right now, that I feel
Yeah.
really, really privileged. So I do feel successful now. I don't know that I would have said that a couple years, and it's not because I make a ton of money, and it's not because I have like the sexiest resume. It's because I feel so satisfied in my work every day.
Yeah. And you help so many. Tell me the position you're in now. Do you think some of this personal branding work, do you think some of these things that you've done coaching wise helped lead you to that place? Do you think it's all related?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes. There is no other pathway to where I am at now, especially the kind of confidence factor that we were talking about through like going to an MBA program, feeling like, is this above what I'm capable of? I always knew I was
Mhm.
a, smart kind of A, B kind of gal, but MBA felt different. And the job I have now as director of operations, I actually sort of like talked my way into that job because a
Mhm.
friend that I was business coaching was struggling, and we were talking about those struggles, and I was thinking like I can transform this business. I can absolutely come in here and do that. And I had enough confidence in all of the things, right? All the things got me to say like, you know what? I can help you. Let me come on board. And that turned into 18-month journey of like explosive growth, and a lot of cool things happened in those 18 months. And it's absolutely all stepping stones from, I think, the start of getting my MBA.
Awesome. Awesome. You're so inspirational, Carrie. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to share?
Oh, just that I do feel that there is a weight and a loveliness to the balance of what you talk about with authenticity and marketing, and how important it is to like take your wins on the smaller, more personal level of like, I remember you saying, you said, add up your numbers of who you've helped, or, whatever.
Hmm.
And we're not talking about I got 10 million hits on one video on YouTube. We don't know if we helped those people or whatever. But all these people that have bought in and trusted and stayed over time, and people that you've coached and people that you've helped through issues with their teams, that might be a dozen or 2 dozen people. Sometimes I think for people in their whole lifetime, like who their clients are and who they really feel they helped. But it's kind of like Casa, which, like, you can have enormous value and change for someone's life doing something really deeply for a small group of people. And I don't know, in today's landscape with social media and those huge numbers, that people really appreciate that. So I'm so glad that you're pushing that like if you help 100 people, think of what that actually looks like in a room, and how magnificent that is to help 100 people, like truly help them, not have them like a video.
You're so right, because measuring on impact is the only way, because it's all a room, right? Behind those screens, we're all in that room. So, Carrie, you mentioned CASA. I want you to explain it because you're so dedicated, and I'm so grateful for the work you do. Tell everyone what that is.
Yes, I'm so proud of being a CASA. So Douglas Daniels, my partner, and I, we've been CASAs for the last few years. It's a court-appointed special advocate, and you get trained and appointed by a court to advocate for children in the foster care system. And it's very serious work. You advocate for their health, their mental health, their education, their family, their placement kind of stuff, and you stick with your child or children. In this case, we have a set of brothers. You stick with them for a long time so that they have someone reliable through their years. And it's pretty intense because you are with them through placements and through trauma and through all that stuff. But again, it's like when we were talking about volunteering, this actually kind of goes back to the impact thing, because we were saying, like, yeah, we could go read books to kids for a day and that might feel really good. But what's going to create long-term enormous impact for just a couple of kids where like you really know that you did something? And just the last like 6 months, Douglas and I have been talking about how, oh, we can see it now. Now that we're a couple years in, we can really see how much our showing up to court once or twice a year and supporting and advocating for these kids in these particular ways, and like being there for the resource parents when they're having a hard time, it's a really different thing than what I thought it was starting out. But the impact for these two boys over time will be much larger than maybe some of the more surface level feel good stuff you can do, spend your time doing.
You sure embody impact over image. Although you have a wonderful brand and wonderful image, but you really go for that impact in everything you do. And I really appreciate the time that you spent with everybody today. I cannot wait for people to get their hands on chapter 7. That's your chapter, that's
Yeah.
your case study. And Carrie, thank you again so much.
Thank you, Vanessa. I'm honored to be a part of your book, so I appreciate you too.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye.